The tranquil park bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon. The rustling of leaves overhead provided a soothing backdrop as he watched his son's laughter intertwine with the wind, creating a melody of innocence. The tendrils of memory stretched back to a painful past. 𝐿, his voice laced with disbelief. 𝐿 looked at him and then at the figure in corner with a shocked expression. How can I? He couldn't form words to speak. Even when she stopped seeing 𝐿 half naked. 𝐿, she mumbled, staring at her who was sitting in a corner, hugging her knees and crying. Her smeared lipstick, messy hair, hickeys from her neck to cleavage. Her condition was a clear and loud testimony of what happened here. Alice glanced at 𝐿, who was steadily staring at 𝐿. She couldn't speak further and burst into loud sobs. 𝐿 stood and ran his fingers through his hair frustratedly. 𝐿 marched towards him and threw a punch on his jaw. Bastard, you ruined my sister. He yelled, continuously throwing punches at him. 𝐿, stop, she said, standing between them. 𝐿 wiped the blood from his nose and lips. Can you guess what your brother had done? He ruined my sister's life. And why? What about her? This bastard is going to marry her tomorrow. 𝐿 felt a heavy knot of guilt and anxiety tightening in his chest. I didn't do anything, he said, vigorously shaking his head. Look at what you have done to me. Still you have the audacity to turn away from what you did. Ella yelled while crying. Alice quickly embraced her. 𝐿 ran his fingers through his hair when the scene of a few hours ago flashed before his eyes. Wine, he mumbled with a smile while she smiled in response. Wine wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned towards his lips. He couldn't remember what had happened after that. He groaned, feeling the sharp headache. Did I really do it, thinking she was wine? He thought with agony and closed his eyes. 𝐿, what happened here? Did you really? She looked at him with teary eyes. He sat holding his head due to the sharp pain. I don't know, I might have. He stopped, letting out a deep breath while a tear rolled down his cheek. Wine, he said, looking at her who was staring at 𝐿 with disbelief. She glanced at Ella and then at 𝐿, who quickly looked away, avoiding her gaze. What happened? She mumbled, gulping the plump in her throat. This bastard ruined everything, 𝐿 muttered through gritted teeth. She began taking slow steps towards 𝐿. She crouched down to his level and held his face in her hands. 𝐿, you have hit him, she said in a quivering tone, rubbing the corner of his lips with her thumb. Tears streamed down his face as he closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the pain. She wiped his tears softly. I'm sorry, he whispered with numb mind and held her hands. I trust you. I know you can't cheat me. I just want to hear from your mouth. Please tell me you didn't do anything, she said with pleading eyes. He released her hands and looked away. We are about to get married tomorrow, she whispered and stood. The weight of her emotions became too much and the tears escaped her eyes. Each tear that fell mirrored the pain in her eyes. 𝐿 stood and held her hand. His condition wasn't different either. Wine released her hand, vigorously shaking her head, and turned around, not forgetting to glance at Ella. A pain arose in her chest, seeing her condition. 𝐿 wanted to stop her, but the words died in his mouth. He wasn't sure about himself as he couldn't remember anything. He blankly stared at her retreating figure, which disappeared from his sight. The familiar jingle of his phone broke the chains of his thoughts. He let out a sigh and glanced at his son 𝐘𝐨𝐿, who was playing with kids and attended the call, walking away. The air was filled with the laughter of kids as they chased after the bright bouncing ball. 𝐘𝐨𝐿 was chasing after the ball when his eyes caught a familiar figure. He stared at the figure with doe eyes. Mama, his face lit up with the recognition. Her brown hair swayed gracefully with the gentle caress of the cold breeze. He quickly ran towards her with a wide smile. Mama, he said as soon as he reached to her. She snapped out of her thoughts and stared at the little kid standing before her. His chubby rosy cheeks and curly hair falling on his forehead, he was a very beautiful boy. Where is your mama, little boy? She said, squinting to his level and ruffled his curly hair. He giggled cutely, making her drool over his cuteness. You're so cute, come on, tell me where is your mama, she said, squishing his chubby cheeks. You are my mama, he said, staring at her innocently. Little boy, you might have misunderstood me, she said with a warm smile. No, I have seen you in my puppy's pictures. He is even searching you. She might be someone else. My features might be similar to her. Why, and who is this little boy? She asked, approaching them. Eva, I don't know. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 interrupted her. Wait here, I will bring my puppy. I'm sure you'll recognize him, he said and ran away. Wine, are you planning on waiting for him? Wine smiled and nodded. His features seem familiar and I want to clear his doubt. Let's wait for him. They sat on the bench waiting for him. 5 minutes passed but 𝐘𝐨𝐮 didn't come back. Wine's phone rang, diverting their attention. It's Dad, she mumbled, seeing his name blinking on screen. Attend it, he might want to talk about Max. Wine nodded and attended the call. After a few moments, she declined the call and stood. Let's go, Dad wants to meet me urgently. Eva nodded and both of them walked away. Meanwhile, 𝐘𝐨𝐮 came towards the bench where 𝐂𝐚 was seated. Puppy, he called him, looking around and began walking. When his eyes landed on 𝐂𝐚's back, he quickly made his way towards him. Alice, I don't want to meet her, she means nothing to me. I have made myself clear from the day one. He spoke furiously. 𝐂𝐚, at least let her meet her son. Don't forget Ella is his mother. He chuckled bitterly as the incident of past flashed before his eyes. She might have given birth to him, but he is just my son, and Alice, all these years you didn't contact me because of your husband. Why did you call me today? Because you just found out the truth? He spoke bitterly. After whatever we all saw, do you think it was easy for Ivan to accept it? And trust me, Ella is dying, but Ivan hasn't seen her face. I don't care about anything, just don't call me again, he said, feeling 𝐘𝐨𝐮's little hands around his legs. Puppy, puppy. He shook his legs while 𝐂𝐚 declined the call and ran his fingers through his hair. Yes, he squinted towards him. You don't have to be stressed anymore. I have found Mama. Come with me, he said, holding his hand. 𝐘𝐨𝐮, wait. You can't just call anyone your Mama. 𝐂𝐚 stopped him. He slapped his forehead with his little palm, making him smile. Puppy, trust me, I saw her. Just come with me, he said and began dragging 𝐂𝐚 with him. Mama, Mama. He called her, looking around but she wasn't there. The glow in his eyes was replaced with dullness which didn't go unnoticed by 𝐂𝐚. 𝐘𝐨𝐮, she is not here, let's go back, he said, holding his hand. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 looked at him with teary eyes. 𝐂𝐚's heart clenched, seeing the tears in his eyes. She was here, I swear. I told her to wait for me, but she went away. Silent tears began flowing down his face. Hey, look at me. You're my warrior. Stop crying. We'll find her again, he softly spoke, wiping his tears, and hugged him. I will not talk to her, he said innocently. 𝐂𝐚 smiled, nodding. 𝐘𝐨𝐮, he went silent for a few moments. Ella wants to meet you. Puppy, I don't want to hear her name again. I will not meet her, he said in a serious tone. 𝐂𝐚 let out a sigh and lifted him in his arms. Fine, I just wanted to inform you, that's it. Let's go home, tomorrow is your first day of school. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 nodded. He made his way towards his car while his thoughts ran towards Wine. He felt a surge of joy and nervousness welling up inside him, filling his heart with happiness. Time skipped. Wine reached home where her parents were waiting for her. She greeted them and sat on the couch. Dad, is everything fine? She asked, glancing at her mom. Wine, it's been 6 years. You should move on from 𝐂𝐚. I have seen how it has affected you and I want the best for you. It's time for you to consider moving forward and open your heart to the possibility of marrying Max. He is a wonderful guy. I believe he will never hurt you, he spoke in a serious tone. I know, Dad, what you mean, but I need some time, he interrupted her. How much time do you need? For God's sake, I have given you almost 6 years. Isn't it enough for you? He yelled, standing from his seat. Wine and her mom flinched due to the sudden outburst. Her mom opened her mouth to speak but got cut off. Not a word. I will talk to his parents, that's final, he said and let out a deep sigh, seeing their pale faces. Wine, I can't see you like this. 𝐂𝐚 moved on, began his new life, and look at you. You're still there. It hurts seeing you like this. You no more smile like you used to. It feels like I have lost my daughter. With the passing years, you are becoming weak. I start to hate him all over. Longing raced through his voice. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, standing in front of him. He shook his head as no and embraced her warmly. I just want to see you happy, he mumbled, patting her head. She nodded and pulled out. I will do as you want. I will talk to Max's parents, he said with a smile and walked away. She laid on her mother's lap. I understand that letting go of the past can be difficult, but sometimes it's necessary for our own happiness, she said and kissed her forehead. You know, Mom, past never dies. It stays in our mind forever. A lone tear rolled down her eye. I wish I could do something for you, she whispered, wiping her tears. his room and came to the living room to read the letter. She picked it out and opened the envelope. "Hey Wine, this is Ella. I don't know when you will get this letter. I'll be alive or not. I want to tell you the truth and get rid of this agony. My one decision and mistake in anger ruined 4 lives. You are 𝐘𝐨𝐮, mine and Kylan's. I have been in love with 𝐘𝐨 ever since I saw him for the first time. I never thought he would already have someone in his life whom he loves crazily. With the passing time, your wedding date was fixed, and I feared at the thought of losing him. That fear turned into anger. The day before your wedding, Ivan, Alice and my parents were out of town while I was alone at home. I got Ivan's phone, which he used for office. I sent 𝐘𝐨 a message that Alice has a perfect idea to surprise you, as he wanted to do something special for you. I told him to come over. We would discuss it. That night when he came, the happiness of achieving the love of his life was visible on his face. When he saw me alone, he was shocked and confused. He was going back, but I stopped him, saying if Ivan had called you, then he might be returning tonight. I spiked the drink and gave it to him. When he felt dizzy, I went closer to him. He stared at me and called me Wine. I just smiled, ignoring it, and leaned towards him, but he passed out and was continuously saying your name. I called one of my friends and he helped me to send 𝐘𝐨 to my room. I wanted to get rid of that pain, so I left 𝐘𝐨 and went to the club with my friend and got drunk. In morning, I realized I had one night stand with someone. I quickly reached home remembering 𝐘𝐨 because I knew Ivan would return today. 𝐘𝐨 was still asleep, so I undressed him, and the rest was in front of your eyes. I had accused him. He said he did nothing. Kylan is not 𝐘𝐨's son. He is from that one night stand. I ruined everything. Kylan didn't got mother's love. 𝐘𝐨 didn't see his parents' faces since 6 years. I don't know how are you, where are you, but I just pray you and 𝐘𝐨 reunites. Kylan hasn't seen my face and I have been yearning to hear Mama from his mouth. I want to hold him to my chest. He has the same hate for me which I once had for you. You know why I'm lying on the hospital bed like an orphan in a miserable state. Neither I'm dying nor I'm alive. I want to meet my parents, brother and son, but they don't want to see my face because of my selfishness. I spent the whole day staring at the door hoping anyone might visit me for the last time. No one is visiting me. I'm really ashamed for everything I did. Please forgive me if you can. Letters were now drenched with Wine's tears. What kind of love was this, Ella? She whispered while sobbing and clutched her chest, gasping for air. Her hands were trembling while she stood and made her way towards 𝐘𝐨's room with stumbling feet. 𝐘𝐨 just came out of the washroom when the door opened, revealing Wine in a vulnerable state. He quickly strayed towards her. Wine, what happened? Why are you crying? He worriedly said. She sat on the floor and buried her face in her hands as the tears flowed freely. He gently crouched, comforting her trembling figure and guided her to the bed. Why did Ella do it? She said between hiccups and placed her head on 𝐘𝐨's chest. He tightly held her in his embrace and closed his eyes in agony, realizing she had discovered the truth. Wine stopped crying. He gently turned her face towards him, looking into her eyes. She ruined us, Wine whispered. He leaned in, resting his forehead against her. She's not at the fault alone. I also share same guilt in this situation. If I had trusted myself, we would have discovered the truth earlier. How did you discover the truth? He asked softly, wiping her tears with his thumb. I met Ivan today. He gave me Ella's letters. She sniffled. He nodded. Have medicines, she said, noticing his hot forehead and pulled out. She passed him the medicine. Come here. He spoke after taking the medicines and leaned on the headboard of the bed. She sat near him. Our 6 years have been wasted being apart. I was such a fool back then. I should have called Ivan and asked him instead of waiting for him. I didn't remember anything when I woke up the next day. It all clicked in my mind, but the time had passed. After marrying Ella, I went to search for you, but there was no trace of you. He intertwined his fingers with hers, looking deep into her eyes. When I came back, I discovered Ella's pregnancy and immediately did a paternity test which didn't match with me. I divorced her the same day and left everything after proving the truth. When 𝐘𝐨𝐮 was born, Alice called me and told Ella wants to send him to the orphanage. 𝐘𝐨𝐮 was like a firefly in the dark for me. I went to the hospital and took him with me. He stopped letting out a deep breath and closed his eyes. Why does 𝐘𝐨𝐮 hate Ella? She asked, moving his hair from his forehead. I don't know. When he was 2 years old, he saw your pictures with me and kissed and giggled saying Mama. I thought he was just trying to speak, but when Ella once met him and tried to hold him, he cried, wiggling. He didn't even glance at him. We both have been yearning for you all these years. I have been crazily searching for you. Finally, I got you. Now I don't want to waste time. He placed her hand on his heart. They stared at each other deeply. Why did it have words to speak? Hey, I'm scared. Is it written in our destiny to be one? Will we be able to start a new life together? My wedding is in a few days. She whispered, hugging him with teary eyes. Cancel the wedding. You're just mine. No one can snatch you from me. She sobbed over his neck while he tightened his grip around her. Then held her face and interrupted. Trust me, everything will be fine. No one can separate us. We have already reaped the punishment for sins we did not commit. He softly kissed away her tears. She laid cuddling him. Time skipped. The next day, Wine went home and revealed the letter to her father. He stared at it with disbelief. She requested him to cancel the wedding. He silently walked away, and at the night he said, I can't make the same mistake that I did 6 years ago. He broke all her hopes. Wine isolated herself in her room, crying and longing. She didn't know what was going on. She didn't contact them, and neither he nor 𝐘𝐿𝐮 did. Today it was finally her wedding day. Her face was drenched with tears. She was walking down the aisle, staring at the invisible point and shedding tears. No one consoled her, neither her mom nor her dad. Even Eva also didn't contact her for once. Mama, don't cry, you look so beautiful. She looked down, hearing a familiar voice, and quickly squinted. 𝐘𝐿𝐮, she whispered and hugged him tightly while sobbing. He rubbed her back with his little hands. Mama, stop crying or I will also cry. She pulled out. He wiped her tears. They all made you cry. I will not talk to them. He said, glaring at her mother, Eva, Ivan, Max, and her father, who shrugged his shoulders. She looked at them confusedly. Her eyes traveled towards the groom and widened, seeing 𝐿. He passed her a smile with teary eyes. Let's go, Mama, Papi is waiting for you. He held her hand and walked towards 𝐿 while she was shocked. The priest announced the wedding vows. 𝐿 kissed her softly. She hugged him and cried her heart out. He told her it was her dad's plan. He invited 𝐿 without telling him he's the groom. That day in the morning, Max came, told he couldn't marry her. He realized he loved Eva. Her father wanted to surprise her while 𝐿 had planned to kidnap her at the wedding day and run away. 16 months later, the door opened, revealing exhausted 𝐿. He rolled his eyes around the room. He went towards the baby crib where his 2 months baby girl was throwing her hands and legs in the air. He squinted and lifted her in his arms and kissed her cheeks. She giggled, scratching his nose. He laid her in the crib and made his way towards the bed where Wine and 𝐘𝐿𝐮 were cuddling and sleeping. He softly released 𝐘𝐿𝐮's hands from Wine's neck, making sure not to wake them. My little devil, he whispered, kissing his forehead, and laid him on the other side. He turned towards Wine and laid with her, resting his head in her neck. She woke up, feeling his nose tracing over her neck. You're back. She wrapped her arms around him and began trailing her fingers in his hair. He hummed in response. Where's 𝐘𝐿𝐮? She whispered. He lifted his head and glared at her. Pay attention to me, he's there. He pointed to the other side of the bed. She kissed his chin. I'll serve dinner. He shook his head as well. Not now, let me eat you first, he said and leaned towards her lips. He captured her lips. She tangled her hands in his hair, deepening the kiss. After a few moments, he pulled out and trailed kisses all over her jaw to neck.